Millionaire exposes employee as worthless until she reveals her incredible secret. The doors of Betty's diner slammed open, a whirlwind of clattering dishes and sizzling bacon accompanying the shouts of laughter and clinking coffee cups. Amid the hustle was Margaret, balancing plates like a circus performer on a tightrope. She poured coffee, wiped tables, and greeted her patrons with the warmth of a mother, her heart full, but her wallet empty. She had inherited this diner from her parents, a gem nestled in the heart of the community. But recently, looming financial troubles cast dark clouds overhead. Despite Margaret's tireless devotion as a single mother, she felt a constant tightness in her chest as bills piled high. Her young son, Timmy, played in a corner, coloring as her heart swelled with love and worry simultaneously. "Mom, can we get ice cream after this?" he asked with bright eyes. Her smile faltered slightly as the question hung heavy in the air. She could only say yes, but her mind raced at how to make that happen. Then there was Richard. He strode in, rich and smug, taking his usual seat as he scanned the diner with disdain. The way he looked at Margaret, as if she was just another speck on his designer shoes. When he announced he'd be investing to modernize the diner, she felt a knot tighten in her stomach. "This place is a relic," he sneered, the regulars shifting uncomfortably at his words. The weight of their gazes made her cheeks flush, her heart racing. "Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." With every shift, Margaret poured her heart into the diner, a small haven filled with people carrying their own struggles. The elderly men talking baseball, the single mothers sharing stories, and the teens laughing over greasy fries. They had all become her family, united. But then came the storm, fierce and unforgiving. The diner's windows rattled as rain lashed against the glass. Inside, the tension was palpable as patrons watched Richard berate a frantic Margaret attempting to save her beloved diner. It shook her to the core, and just when she thought despair would swallow her whole, Margaret rallied herself. If she was going down, she'd fight tooth and nail. With fierce determination, she announced a fundraiser, her voice trembling but resolute. The community she had nurtured through her kindness gathered around her like a protective blanket, igniting hope in the air. Then came her moment, a tight knot forming in her throat as she revealed a shocking secret. "I'm not just a waitress, I'm a chef," she said, her heart racing, eyes blazing with passion. Trained under a prestigious mentor, she had the skills to transform this diner into something extraordinary, but had hidden in the shadows of self-doubt for too long. Richard's face went pale, realization dawning. His assumptions faltered, leaving the community in a charged atmosphere of anticipation. Could he let go of his arrogance? Was he ready to embrace what he had so openly mocked? As Margaret stared down her new path, the stakes were high, and hope flickered like a candle in the tempest. Would Richard's change of heart spark a blaze of community spirit, or snuff it out? Only time would tell. The diner fell silent, the brewing storm outside echoing the tension inside as every eye turned to Richard. For a moment, the world felt frozen. Margaret's heart thundered in her chest, each beat louder than the last. Would he laugh? Dismiss her entirely? Or worse, retaliate? Richard shifted in his seat, his expression morphing from arrogant disbelief to a wary curiosity. The regulars, caught up in the charged atmosphere, leaned in as if the very air was electrified with possibilities. Margaret stood tall, more than just a waitress now. She became a woman on the brink of reclaiming her power. "Look, Margaret," Richard finally replied, attempting nonchalance while his penetrating gaze bore into her. "Cooking is just cooking. This diner needs fresh ideas, not nostalgic fantasies." With that, He motioned dismissively, but doubt flickered behind his polished facade. "I'm not selling dreams. I'm offering reality." Margaret's voice rang out, sharper than she intended. The diners straightened in their chairs, faces lighting up with shared pride. She had worked harder than anyone remembered, and now, with her secret unveiled, they saw her differently. "Well then, let's see what you've got," Richard challenged, a smirk creeping onto his lips. "A tasting. Show me why this diner deserves a lifeline." "Deal," she shot back without hesitation, her pulse quickening at the challenge. "I'll host a tasting event. The community can judge my food, not just your pockets." The glimmer of excitement rippled through the crowd. Timmy grinned from the corner, oblivious to the weight of the moment, but feeling the possibility of ice cream. And perhaps something more. Richard's smile faltered slightly as murmurs swept through the diner, a chorus of patrons voicing their support for Margaret. She could feel their energy, a wave that bolstered her courage. "Fine," he said, feigning indifference, but the glint in his eyes revealed that he was ready to battle, perhaps even scared. "You have 2 weeks. Prove yourself." With one last dismissive flick of his wrist, he called for the check, as though the matter was settled. But the patrons weren't so easily brushed aside. As Richard rose, the regulars began to clap. The sound was timid at first, then it built into a thunderous applause, echoing off the diner walls, shaking the very foundation of her fears. Margaret felt the warmth of their faith, a fiery flicker igniting the hope within her. Yet, doubt crept in. What if she failed? What if Richard twisted the event to embarrass her? She'd have to face him, not just with her cooking skills, but with all the strength she had gathered over the years. "Are you ready for this, Margaret?" she whispered to herself, heart racing. The whole diner felt like a movie scene where the hero was about to step into the spotlight, and she was terrified, yet exhilarated. 2 weeks. Was that enough time? Her memories of culinary school came rushing back. Long nights, grueling hours, but also triumph and joy in creating art with food. As she stepped back to the kitchen, determination ignited. She could breathe in the scent of her past, of her parents' diner filled with laughter and hope. It was time to rekindle that magic, not just for herself, but for Timmy and the entire community that stood behind her. The clock was ticking, and her next move was pivotal. Would she rise to the occasion or falter under the pressure? She had to start planning the menu, and the thought of showcasing her hidden talents made her giddy and nervous at once. The showdown was approaching, and the stakes had never felt higher. Would she succeed in showing Richard and the world what Betty's diner was truly made of? Or would this be another dream dashed? As the door swung closed behind Richard, she knew one thing. The time for hiding was over. What would come next as she stepped into her role to fight for her beloved diner, and would the community rally around her in strength? Only time would reveal the answers. The morning sun broke through the clouds, casting a warm glow over the diner. Margaret felt the sunshine sprinkle over her skin, a stark contrast to the looming storm she was destined to face. As she entered the kitchen, the familiar sounds of sizzling pans and bustling footsteps surrounded her like a comforting embrace. Yet, beneath that comfort, anxiety tangled her stomach in knots. With a deep breath, she pulled out a notepad and began jotting down ideas for her tasting event. Her mother's creamy chicken pot pie, her father's hearty beef stew, and a fresh twist on the classic apple pie danced through her mind. Each dish was intertwined with memories and love, flavors that were more than just food, they were heritage. Timmy entered the kitchen, his little face bright and curious. "Are we making ice cream for the big tasting, Margaret?" His eyes sparkled with hope, innocence shining through. "If I can get the recipes just right, we might have a special dessert," she replied, smiling down at him. Margaret loved that he still believed in magic. She found it more and more elusive. "I want to help," he exclaimed, jumping up and down in excitement. "Okay, chef, you can help me gather the ingredients. That'll keep you busy." As they both set off, her mind raced. What if people didn't resonate with her cooking? Would they see her as just a waitress still? Richard's voice echoed in her head, dismissive and belittling. She shook it off, a mantra forming in her heart. This was for the diner, for Timmy, for the community. Throughout the day, she prepared, testing recipes, measuring spices, and making the familiar dishes that had been staples for years, but with a twist only she could bring. She reinvigorated the old recipes with modern flair, foregoing the comfort of nostalgia for something fresh yet familiar. But as the sun dipped below the horizon that night, urgency clawed at her. The community's support was her anchor, yet she couldn't shake the worry that Richard was plotting against her. Their last encounter nagged at her. His challenges had layers, and she couldn't read him. Rallying excitement, she put up flyers announcing the tasting event. Day after day, the town buzzed with anticipation. Betty's diner was slowly transforming, and with each enthusiastic nod from a regular, confidence surged within her. The night before the event, sleep eluded her. What if no one comes? The thought was like a whispering ghost, haunting her with uncertainty. Just as she was about to spiral, she felt the warmth of Timmy curling up next to her, his breathing slow and steady. She tucked a loose strand of hair behind his ear, a surge of love washing over her. He was her reason, the heartbeat of all that she was fighting for. That moment grounded her, anchoring her to her purpose. Tomorrow was about showcasing her heart and soul, about standing firm against a man who thought he could push her around. Nothing could take that away. The day arrived, and the diner erupted with eager faces, some familiar, some new. The buzz of conversation filled the air, threads of hope weaving through the crowd. Yet, Margaret's stomach twisted with nerves. She was ready. But what if it wasn't enough? Richard would be there, waiting for her to falter. As she plated the first dish, a rich, steaming bowl of her mother's pot pie, the anticipation became palpable. People leaned in, eyes sparkling with curiosity. This wasn't just about food. It was about connection, community, and the power of resilience. But just as she stepped into the spotlight to make her opening remarks, she spotted Richard at the back of the diner, smirking as if he already knew the outcome. Her heart raced. Margaret cleared her throat, ready to take the plunge. This was her moment. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to my tasting. Tonight we—" But before she could finish, Richard held up a hand, his voice cutting through her words as he spoke. "Let's see if you can impress us all." A collective gasp rippled through the crowd, tension thick in the air. Could she prove him wrong? Would her 2 weeks of hard work shine bright? Or would Richard's shadow loom over all her dreams? The answer was just around the corner, and the stakes had never been higher. Margaret's heart thudded in her chest, drowning out the murmurs from the crowd. Richard's challenge hung like a storm cloud over the diner, dimming the warmth of the faces around her. She took a deep breath, reminding herself that resilience was carved from moments just like this. "Thank you, Richard," she replied, steadying her voice. "I hope to surprise you." People leaned in closer. Curiosity piqued. They had come not just for the food, but to witness a moment, a story unfolding. With newfound determination, she lifted the pot pie, still steaming, its golden crust beckoning like a warm hug on a winter day. Each handcrafted dish reflected memories of home, and she was here to share those. Margaret couldn't ignore Richard's presence, but each gaze from the crowd filled her with strength. "I'm not just the waitress. I'm more than that," she thought. She motioned for the first guest to come forward, her heart fluttering as she placed the bowl in front of an elderly couple. Their eyes lit up with excitement, and Margaret caught the fleeting smile that danced across their faces. "This is my mother's recipe," she said, her voice carrying warmth. "Creamy chicken pot pie." The woman took a spoonful, her eyes twinkling with delight after the first bite. "Oh my, this reminds me of my grandmother's cooking," she exclaimed, a hint of nostalgia swirling in her voice. Margaret's heart soared. As the couple savored the pie, she turned back to Richard. He was watching her closely, arms crossed, an unwavering skepticism etched into his features. "What's the twist?" he queried, voice dripping with mock disbelief. "Tonight, it's not just about the food," she said, a challenging spark igniting within her. "It's about sharing stories, connecting, and proving." Before she could continue, another guest interrupted. "This is the best pot pie I've ever tasted, Margaret. You've outdone yourself." Cheers erupted around her, the energy of the crowd building with momentum. Richard shifted, annoyance flickering across his face. She could see the gears turning in his head. With each passing hour, the guests moved through her carefully curated menu, delighting in freshly baked bread, savory stew, and the anticipated apple pie. Timmy darted between tables, bringing refills and chatting with the patrons, his laughter a burst of sunshine. Margaret couldn't help but beam with pride. She was building connections, not just selling meals. As she finally prepared to present the apple pie, the room hushed in anticipation. Margaret took a moment to collect herself, glancing at the vibrant apples glistening under the caramel drizzle. As she spoke of the recipe, a family legacy passed down through generations, her confidence flourished. But Richard wasn't done. He leaned back, crossing his arms tighter. "You might be impressing them now, but one bad dish, and they'll all turn on you. I hope you can handle the pressure." Those words stung like ice water, snapping her back for just a moment. Doubt clawed at her thoughts like wild vines. But then she remembered their faces, the joy, the connection. This was her time. With a smile, she presented the apple pie to the crowd. "What makes this pie special is the love baked into each layer. And tonight, it's not just a dessert, it's a reminder of home." The crowd erupted into applause, Timmy cheering the loudest. She caught his beaming smile, her heart swelling with pride again. Yet Richard's disdain remained sharp, and with it came a wave of unease. Would the night's success hold against his looming shadow? As Margaret soaked in the positive energy, she caught sight of Richard, who had begun to whisper among a small group gathered by the bar. They nodded, their expressions unreadable. A pit formed in her stomach. What are they plotting? She fought to push the worry aside. Tonight hadn't merely been a risk. It had been a leap of faith. But with Richard lurking like a predator, the real challenge was yet to come. As the applause faded, Margaret squeezed her eyes shut for a moment, feeling the weight of the room rest heavy on her shoulders. What if this doesn't last? She opened her eyes to see Timmy gazing back at her, filled with light and pride. Then the door swung open, and a gust of wind swept through the diner. Margaret turned, only to see Richard smiling. But this time his smile wasn't just a smirk. It held something darker, something calculated. What's he up to now? She wondered, bracing herself for whatever awaited next. The crowd buzzed around her, unaware of the storm that was brewing, but Margaret stood resolute. This was her moment, her fight. "Let's see how the night unfolds," she whispered to herself, her heart pounding with anticipation. The atmosphere shifted as Richard stepped into the diner, his presence shadowing the warmth that had enveloped them just moments before. The crowd continued to murmur, their eyes flitting between the lively scene and Richard's calculated demeanor. Margaret wiped her hands on her apron, trying to maintain her composure. She could feel her heart racing in response to Richard's lingering gaze. The way he watched her felt like a hawk sizing up its next move. "Ladies and gentlemen," Richard began, his voice cutting through the chatter like a knife. The crowd quieted, everyone's attention snapping to him. "I know you're all enjoying this little feast, and I commend our dear Margaret for her culinary efforts." The edge in his tone was unmistakable. "But I can't help but wonder, is she truly as good as you think? Have you ever tasted something better? Something truly remarkable?" His lips curled into a smirk, a wolfish grin that sent discomfort sprawling through the room. Margaret felt her stomach clench. Why is he doing this? She thought, a fresh wave of anxiety washing over her. It was clear he wasn't done with his game yet. Maybe, Richard continued, leaning casually against the bar. If she's nothing without her mother's recipe, it would be better if we experienced it firsthand. What's the chance she can pull off a secret ingredient? Something to truly bring this place back to life? The challenge hung in the air, heavy and oppressive. A murmur of confusion spread through the crowd, their excitement dampening as Richard's words sank in. Margaret's heart raced. She could practically feel their eyes turning against her. I can do this, she reminded herself. But uncertainty gripped her like a vice. What if she failed? What if the secret she held, the one that tied her to food, to love, to her family, wasn't strong enough to win this battle? With a steadiness she barely felt, she stepped forward. You want a secret? She called out, her voice piercing through the tension. I'll show you. Richard raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued but not about to relent. Is it a family recipe too? Or something you've concocted on your own? It's both, Margaret declared, her voice growing stronger. A sudden wave of confidence pushed her forward like the tide. Every bite you've tasted tonight has a story. Love, loss, laughter. Each dish is filled with our history, a rich tapestry of dreams woven together like a quilt. The touch of her words clung to the diners, a spark lighting up some faces. She could see the renewed glimmers of excitement, the way they seemed to rally behind her. What do you crave, Richard? Something spicy, savory, or sweet? I'll create something special, something you can't ignore. You think you can turn this around? He scoffed, an incredulous look dancing on his face. And what happens if it's not enough? Margaret held his stare, determination swirling within her. Then I'll take a step back and leave the diner behind. But if I succeed, if I truly bring joy to everyone tonight, will you finally accept that this too matters? The crowd held their breath. For a brief moment, hope hung delicately in the balance. Richard chuckled, defiance radiating from him. I don't see the audience of loyal fans giving you a pass, Margaret. But I'll entertain the idea. He leaned closer. Make it a challenge, and I'll consider your game. Margaret swallowed hard, her heart hammering. It felt as if the entire universe was leaning in. She had a chance to transform their evening, to elevate the diner's spirit beyond Richard's looming darkness. As she nodded, a mix of excitement and fear churned within her. She turned to Timmy, whose face mirrored her own uncertainty, but glimmered with faith in her. Get me what I need, will you? She implored, determination flooding her voice. Let's do this, Margaret, he smiled, giving her a thumbs up before hurrying off. As she gathered the ingredients from the kitchen, her heart raced, each beat drumming to a rhythm of hope and urgency. What was she about to create? Something that could change everything? The scent of spices filled her senses, igniting memories long tucked away. And for the first time that night, she felt the vibrant energy of the room surge once more. As she began to mix and chop, a realization dawned on her. This was more than just food. It was about the people, the connection, the soul behind each bite. Just as she poured her heart into her creation, a low chuckle from Richard sliced through the kitchen door. You're going to need more than nostalgia to impress me, Margaret, he taunted, the heavy weight of his gaze still lingering. But her spirit ignited. I can't wait to show you, she whispered under her breath. In that moment, she understood. It was not just a challenge, but a declaration of her true self. And as she plated her dish, she couldn't shake the feeling that everything was building to something that could change not only the night, but the very essence of who she was. Would Richard be ready for what was coming? The kitchen buzzed with activity as Margaret moved like a gust of wind, gathering her thoughts and her ingredients with newfound determination. Her hands worked deftly, chopping vegetables and measuring spices, each slice and stir a reminder of her journey. She didn't just want to please the crowd. She wanted to prove to herself that she could stand up to Richard and his sharp tongue. With each ingredient she selected, memories filled her mind. The laughter of her mother as they cooked side by side. The joy of family gatherings where food became the centerpiece of love and connection. This was more than just a meal. It was the entirety of her heart, poured into one dish. "Come on, Margaret," she murmured under her breath, trying to drown out the taunts of Richard's words. "You've got this." She couldn't afford to doubt herself now. The entire diner felt like a ticking clock, each tick a reminder that time was slipping away. Margaret glanced at the clock on the wall, panic surging through her as the seconds passed too quickly. She could hear the chatter from the patrons, a mix of excitement and skepticism. Were they cheering her on, or were they waiting for her to fail? Timmy burst through the kitchen door with a box of ingredients, his face flushed with enthusiasm. "I got everything, Mags. Are you ready?" He placed the box on the counter and gave her an encouraging smile. "I will be," she replied, taking a deep breath as she looked at the array of colors before her. Red, green, yellow. Each ingredient a piece of the vibrant life she yearned to share with people. "Let's make this unforgettable." Timmy stepped closer, eager to help. "What can I do?" "Just keep your eyes peeled, okay? I'll need you to help with the plating." She directed him to grab fresh herbs and a dash of creativity from the shelf, knowing that together their teamwork would bring magic to life. As she stirred the pot, a rich aroma enveloped the kitchen, wrapping them in a blanket of warmth. The spices mingled in the air, and with every inhale, Margaret could feel doubt start to dissipate like mist under the morning sun. This moment was hers, and she refused to let Richard cloud it. Richard's voice rang out from outside the kitchen, loud and mocking. "You don't really believe she can serve anything that'll even compare to fine dining, do you?" Margaret stiffened but kept her focus. She turned to Timmy, who gritted his teeth in frustration. "Ignore him. Just focus on what you're creating. They want you to succeed." "Right," she said with a nod, gathering the ingredients she needed for the final touch. She had seen Richard's kind of dining, expensive, high-end, and characterless. It was time she brought the heart back to the plate. Finally, she plated the dish, drizzling a colorful sauce that glinted like jewels under the bright diner lights. Each swirl spoke of passion and purpose. She stepped back, taking a moment to admire her creation, the rush of fear still pulsing, but slowly transforming into quiet confidence. "Wow," Timmy breathed, eyes wide. "Margaret, this looks amazing." "Just like Mom taught me," she said softly, a smile breaking through her nervousness. But, as her gaze drifted to the kitchen door, memories flashed. Would her mother be proud? "Margaret," Richard's voice boomed again, like thunder rolling in. "You'd better bring that masterpiece out before they get tired of waiting." Clenching her fists and straightening her spine, borrowing power from Timmy's hopeful gaze, she stepped toward the exit. "I'm ready," she said, voice steadier than she felt. As she approached the dining area, a hush fell. The diners looked on in anticipation, eyes locked on her as she carried the plate with pride. Margaret felt her heart race, a chaotic symphony of hope competing with doubt. Would they see the love behind her dish? Would Richard's sharp tongue be silenced, at least for tonight? With a deep breath, she placed the plate in front of Richard. "Here," she said, her heart in her throat. "This is my secret." Richard's eyes narrowed, a mixture of intrigue and skepticism swirling within them. "Let's see if it lives up to the hype." But Margaret couldn't focus on Richard now. She had to be ready for the reactions of the crowd. She needed to know if the story she poured into this dish would resonate with them. As the forks lifted, the clattering of metal against plates drew closer. Would the taste awaken them? Would it ignite that spark she fought so hard to keep? The moment was upon her, thick with suspense and possibility. Did she dare to hope that it was enough? The seconds dragged like hours as Richard stared at the plate, his fork hovering before him like a sword of judgment. Margaret's heart raced, every beat echoing in her ears, drowning out the noise of the diner. The murmurs of the crowd became a distant hum, their anticipation a heavy weight on her shoulders. Finally, with a smirk dancing on his lips, Richard speared a piece of her creation and lifted it to his mouth. The world held its breath. Margaret's gaze flickered around the room. She saw a mix of worry and curiosity in the eyes of the other diners, as if they were sharing this pivotal moment with her. Richard took a bite, chewing slowly. A tense silence hovered in the air. Suddenly, his expression twisted, and Margaret's stomach dropped. Had she failed? Memories of all the times she had come close to giving up surged through her mind, mixing with her current dread. But just then, something shifted in Richard's posture. He swallowed hard, and for a fleeting moment, confusion flashed on his face, a vulnerability she rarely saw in him. He said, his tone shifting from mockery to something else. This isn't what I expected. Margaret's heart began to flutter with a mix of hope and anxiety. Did he actually like it? Was he trying to bait her? She could barely breathe, each breath an electric jolt of anticipation. The crowd began to chatter amongst themselves, glancing at one another, surprise washing over their faces. One diner said, "I didn't think she had it in her," followed by another proclaiming, "This is delicious." Richard jabbed his fork into the plate, his initial disdain slowly melting into curiosity. "What is this sauce?" he asked, genuine intrigue lacing his voice. "It's a family recipe," Margaret answered, her confidence building with each word. "A blend of herbs and spices that brings out the heart of the dish." "I can see that," Richard replied, his tone begrudgingly respectful. "But you still have a lot to prove, Margaret." The challenge hung in the air like a newly lit flame. Determination sparked within her. She wasn't just here for Richard's approval. She was here to reclaim all the dreams she had poured into her cooking. As she watched the eaters around her dive into their plates, their expressions of delight sinking into her heart, Margaret felt a warmth bloom inside. It wasn't just a victory for her culinary ambitions. It was a reclaiming of her identity, a step toward the courage she had long hidden. Timmy peeked into the dining area, eyes wide with pride. "You did it, Mags," he beamed. "They love it." Richard put down his fork, a new kind of admiration in his gaze. "All right, I'll give you credit where it's due. This is good, but..." His smirk returned, his competitive spirit ignited. "Let's see if you can keep this momentum going. After all, one dish doesn't make you a chef." "Challenge accepted," Margaret replied, her voice firm. There was no way she was backing down now. Suddenly, the atmosphere shifted. Cheers erupted as the diners began to applaud. It was a collective acknowledgement of her hard work, a wave of support that fueled her fire even more. Margaret looked out at the sea of faces, glowing with acceptance. In this moment, she felt more alive than ever. She had come here to prove a point, but at that moment, she realized it was about so much more. It was about connection, love, and belonging. But beneath the exhilaration, a question lingered. Could she really sustain this newfound confidence, or would Richard find a way to trip her up once again? The cheers began to fade, yet the challenges within the diner were only just beginning. Would she rise to meet them all? Could she truly embrace who she was meant to be and craft a legacy out of her kitchen? Her tension still simmered beneath the surface, and as Richard raised an eyebrow, she sensed the storm was far from over. What would be the next test? Would she continue to break free, or was this where the tension would finally snap? Margaret took a deep breath, the warm applause wrapping around her like a safety blanket. It felt like the whole diner believed in her. She glanced at Richard, who was still observing her, a contemplative look on his face. "So, what's next, chef?" he asked, a playful challenge lighting up his eyes. "Next?" she echoed, heart pounding in her chest. I'm thinking about turning up the heat. The words slipped from her lips before she had a chance to fully consider their weight. But she felt that fire inside her growing stronger, leaving no space for hesitation. The realization settled in. This wasn't just about food or winning Richard's respect anymore. It was about all the late nights she had spent experimenting, the setbacks that had once made her feel so small. She wanted to show everyone that she was more than just Richard's employee. She was an artist with a passion that could radiate from the plates she served. Timmy, still buzzing from the excitement, sidled over. What are you going to make next, Mags? His wide eyes sparkled with admiration, making her heart swell. Something bold, Margaret replied, feeling energy pulse through her veins. Something that will surprise them again. Like what? Timmy pressed. She thought for a moment, scanning the ingredients in her small kitchen. There was so much potential there, waiting for her to unlock it. How about a fusion dish? Something that blends the comfort of home with a twist of the unexpected. Like what? Richard interjected, his voice dissecting her words, a challenge yet again. Margaret met his gaze, her resolve hardening. How about a smoky chipotle mac and cheese, topped with crab and a sprinkle of lime? I want to shake up their taste buds, make them remember this meal. Richard smirked, amusement flickering in his features. That sounds ambitious, but is it enough to win over a picky crowd? Watch me. Her grin widened as she rolled her shoulders back, channeling that simmering energy. The moment she stepped into her kitchen, Margaret moved fluently, swirling through the small space like a dancer. Each ingredient was part of the choreography she had practiced in her head for so long. She mixed flavors like they were melodies, letting her intuition guide her, forcing aside the nagging voice that whispered doubts. The smoky scent of the chipotle filled the air as she stirred, and soon laughter bubbled up from the dining area, puncturing her concentration for a moment. Slowing down gave her a chance to take it all in. There was joy spilling from the tables, a palpable sense of community that made her smile. She was not alone anymore. After a flurry of activity, the creamy mac and cheese was bubbling away on the stove, and the crab was ready to be added. She could feel Richard's eyes on her, watching every movement, and a sly part of her wanted to impress him more than ever. Ready to be amazed? She called over her shoulder with a tight smile. When she plated the dish, it came out vibrant, the bright crab contrasting beautifully against the rich, cheesy backdrop. She sprinkled lime zest on the top, enjoying the pop of color and the tangy scent that matched her own rising excitement. Here goes nothing, she murmured to herself before stepping back into the dining area, holding the plates high. Richard raised an eyebrow, amusement dancing in his eyes. You're really going for it. Let's see if you can handle the heat. The diners fell quiet as she presented her offering, the tension thickening the air. They leaned in, curious. Could her boldness pay off? Would Richard's smirk turn into disbelief once again? Or would she find herself welcomed into their newfound confidence? As the first forks plunged into the creamy goodness, Margaret felt her heart leap. Would this be another triumph, or a lesson in humility? A grin crept onto Timmy's face as he took his first bite, his eyes narrowing in surprise. And then the din began. "Oh, wow," he exclaimed, prompting others to dive in. The sounds of delight were intoxicating, generating a buzz that felt electric. Richard's expression began to shift, intrigue creeping into his gaze. Okay, not bad, Mags, but it's not over until they've had their fill. And just like that, the challenge was redefined. Margaret knew she had something incredible on her hands, but would it be enough to seal the deal with Richard? Just then, she spotted a familiar figure at the door, someone who could change everything. The owner of the diner, curious about the commotion. What would he think of her creation? The door swung open with a jingle, letting in a gust of air filled with sounds of the bustling diner and the rich scent of her creation. Mr. Harrison, the owner, stepped inside. his sharp eyes scanning the room with a mix of curiosity and authority. He was a tall man, dressed impeccably in a tailored suit that contrasted sharply with the casual ambiance of the diner. The laughter faded slightly as patrons noticed him, but Margaret felt a new surge of adrenaline pulsing through her, fueling her determination. "What's all this?" Mr. Harrison asked, his tone light. But there was an undertone of seriousness that made everyone sit a little straighter. Margaret felt as if the room had closed in on her. She could feel Richard's gaze boring into her, filled with both challenge and a flicker of pride. She took a step forward, holding the plate steady in her hands. "This is my new dish, Mr. Harrison. A smoky chipotle mac and cheese with crab." He raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "Looks intriguing." His gaze shifted between the plates and the diners, who were now finishing their first bites and smiling. "Try it," Richard said, breaking the thick tension in the air. "You might be surprised." With a nod, Mr. Harrison took one of the plates from her, his expression serious as he raised the fork to his mouth. Silence enveloped the room as everyone watched, anticipation crackling in the air. The first bite seemed to transform Mr. Harrison. His eyes widened, and he chewed thoughtfully for a moment. "Well, this is unexpected," he declared, the corners of his mouth turning up just a bit. Margaret relaxed slightly, that knot of anxiety loosening as a wave of relief washed over her. "Unexpected in a good way or bad?" she challenged, a playful smirk finding its way onto her face. "It's fantastic," he replied, his surprise evident. "In fact, it's remarkable. Not just for a diner, but in culinary terms." A rush of warmth flooded through her. This was what she had been striving for. This was the validation she needed to know she was on the right path. The diners began murmuring their excitement, sharing bites and rallying with cheers that filled the space once more. Richard's look impressed her the most. "Told you she had flair," he said, nudging Timmy, who beamed with pride. "Don't get too comfortable," Mr. Harrison warned lightly, addressing Margaret. "We need to discuss what this means for the diner, and for you." His words hung in the air like a promise, electrifying her thoughts. What could this mean? Would he promote her idea? Give her the chance to develop a new menu? Just then, a waitress chimed in. "If this dish has anything to do with her creativity, I bet we'll be lining up out the door." Cheers erupted, and Margaret felt a rush of confidence. Mr. Harrison raised his hand for silence. "Let's see what the rest of the staff thinks. Bring out your dishes." He gestured, and excitement flooded the room again, the energy shifting to a collective sense of unity. Margaret turned back to her kitchen, her heart racing. She was more than just a cook behind the line. She was someone whose voice could be heard. But still, doubt crept in at the edges of her mind. Could she keep this momentum going? Richard stepped up beside her, watching as she busily prepared. "Just remember, it's not just about impressing them. Show them you're ready for the next level." "I plan to," she replied, feeling a new resolve. But then, before she could lose herself in that momentum, Timmy's anxious voice cut through her thoughts. "Mags, what if they don't like what you make next?" The question hung heavy, evoking her insecurities. Margaret met his gaze, the worry evident in his eyes. "I'll make sure they do," she assured, though doubts started to claw at her again. As she stared out at the diners, hope mixed with uncertainty in her heart. This was a defining moment, and she couldn't let it slip away. What if they loved her next creation? Or what if they didn't? She took a breath, focused on the ingredients laid out before her, and began to think. What could she create that would truly reflect who she was? And just then, her gaze fell on a hidden jar of spices in the corner of the kitchen, a memory lighting up in her mind. She smiled. What if she integrated a secret family recipe, one that had been passed down but never truly shared? The path ahead felt clearer, but one question remained heavy on her heart. Could she summon the courage to reveal her true self to Richard in the diner, risking it all? The chatter in the diner bubbled with excitement as Margaret moved confidently around her kitchen, her heart racing with a mixture of hope and anxiety. The energy from the diners, the anticipation of Mr. Harrison's approval, and her desire to prove herself ignited a fire within her. This was not just about impressing Richard or the guests. It was about finally taking her rightful place as the heart of Betty's diner. With her mind racing, she grabbed the hidden jar of spices that sparked an idea. A family recipe she had treasured but always tucked away, fearing it wasn't enough. She opened the lid, inhaling the fragrant blend of herbs that danced vividly in the air, memories of her mother swirling in her heart. She could feel the pinch of nostalgia and warmth, the beauty of her roots stirring within her. "Let's do this, Timmy," she said, determination flooding her voice. Timmy, who had been helping with the last preparations, looked up with adoration. "What are we making now, Mags?" "We're making something truly special. Something that represents this diner's history and my family's love," she proclaimed, her spirit soaring. "A spicy shrimp and grits with a secret twist." "Awesome!" Timmy cheered, his excitement infectious. With swift movements, Margaret gathered her ingredients, envisioning each step. She tossed shrimp in the spice blend, combining flavors that shouted hometown comfort with a daring kick. As she worked, the sounds of laughter and conversation in the diner filled the air. Each laugh echoed in her heart, reminding her why she was fighting so hard. Once the shrimp were sizzling in the pan, she turned her attention to preparing the rich, creamy grits, a dish that brought warmth and comfort to every soul it touched. With each stir, Margaret felt the rhythm of her heart align with her surroundings, the familiar sounds becoming a symphony of resilience. "Do you think Richard will like it?" Timmy asked, his innocent query slicing through her focus. She paused for a moment, considering his question deeply. "If he doesn't, it won't matter," she said, locking eyes with her son, grounding herself in that moment. "The food has to come from my heart. If it does, it will resonate with everyone, even Richard." As the final touches came together, the sun dipped below the horizon outside the diner, casting a golden glow inside. It felt like magic. The diners and staff buzzed in anticipation, whispers floating through the room. Finally, Margaret plated her creation, a colorful mirage of shrimp nestled in the creamy grits, topped with bright green scallions and a drizzle of her secret sauce. "This is it," she said, her voice firm yet trembling with excitement. When she stepped back into the dining area, the murmurs fell silent, and all eyes were on her once again. Richard's gaze was sharp, but a flicker of something, curiosity or maybe surprise, twinkled within it. "Here's another attempt," she announced, her voice strong. "This is my spicy shrimp and grits, created with a family recipe that speaks of love and home." Richard's brow furrowed slightly, but he didn't interrupt. The diners leaned in closer, eager to taste the heart of her creation. She felt the weight of their hopes and support surrounding her like a warm embrace. As they tasted, every forklift met with expressions of delight, from warm smiles to outright gasps of pleasure. Laughter erupted once again, creating a tidal wave of energy washing over Margaret. "Margaret, this is incredible!" one diner exclaimed, and the others began chiming in with enthusiastic agreements. Each comment filled her with a radiant warmth, a feeling of acceptance that she had longed for. As Richard took a bite, the room held its breath. His expression morphed, but this time it was alive with surprise, and perhaps even respect. He swallowed slowly, and for a moment, she thought she glimpsed a hint of a smile. "This is impressive, Margaret," he finally said, a tone of sincerity cracking through his usual bravado. "You've shown real growth tonight." Her heart soared like a balloon breaking free, filling the diner with a sense of triumph. Each face around her lit up with happiness, and Margaret felt a wave of relief wash over her. "Thank you, Richard," she replied, holding his gaze. But this isn't just about one meal. This diner is about community, spirit, and love. I'm glad you see that tonight. Margaret's soul felt lighter. She wasn't just proving herself to Richard. She was uplifting her entire community. The clapping filled the air, warm and inviting, a round of encouragement that brought tears to her eyes. And in that moment, Margaret knew she had stepped into her true power. Not just as a chef, but as a woman who had fought against all odds and had come out victorious. From that night forward, Richard transformed his attitude, recognizing the beauty and strength of Betty's diner. With Margaret at the helm, the diner flourished, becoming a beacon of light and love in the community. As for Timmy, he looked up at her with admiration. You really did it, Mags. Yes, we did it, she corrected, wrapping her arms around him, filling him with love. Together. And as the night continued, the laughter and joy wrapped around them like warm blankets, promising that this was just the beginning. Margaret had not only fought for her diner, she had rediscovered herself and ignited a fire within others. With the support of her community behind her, she was ready to take on whatever challenges lay ahead. This was a new chapter for Betty's diner, a vibrant embrace of resilience, warmth, and connection, rooted in the celebration of love. Now what could be next? Only the future would tell. Don't wait another second. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you're always updated with our next exclusive stories. Leave a like now to fuel those algorithms and show your love for this incredible journey. Share your reactions and feelings about this ending in the comments below. And shout out this video to at least 5 friends who need to witness this breathtaking transformation. Let's spread this joy. You need to share it now.